tell what it is yet.
Let's put the moon in there somewhere. Resting just on the horizon there. I've forgotten the blessed horizon.
Sunrise, bringing the morning, fluttering the skirt.
It's not funny. What are you laughing about?
The first thing that made you famous was that wonderful programme I remember watching as a child.
The big paintings.
And the enthusiasm and those moments. How did you work out that you could do those paintings when no one knew what it was? And did you sort of experiment for ages?
Well, we used to rehearse the paintings against a stopwatch. You've got to lose 8 minutes. 8 minutes, you know.
Oh, boy.
And do it again and do it again. But the trick was to keep it as a secret till you got to the very end.
Yes.
And then people go, ah!
And we do the stripping thing and hope it works. Does it work? Yeah. It goes off there, get the little moonlight reflections on there.
This Glastonbury is 40 years old this year. And I've just turned 80 this year. Can you believe that? All together. There's an old Australian stockman lying, dying. What a memory. He gets himself up onto one elbow, turns to his mates who are gathered round in Glastonbury, and he says, watch me wallabies feed, mate, watch me wallabies feed. Hey, look, they're a dangerous breed, mate, so watch me wallabies feed. All together now, tiny kangaroo now, sport, tiny kangaroo now, tiny kangaroo.
I imagined, or I envisaged, the Queen of the Fairies turning up in a transparent negligee type gown with beautiful embroidery, like broderie anglais type thing that you could see through in a misty way, and with a bob of hair that came down over shoulders and things. In the Shakespeare play, she's been given this potion so that the first person she sees when she wakes up, she falls instantly and dramatically over the top in love with. And of course, the first person she sees is somebody wearing an ass's head bottom.
What angel wakes me from my flowery bed?
The plain song cuckoo grey, whose note full many a man doth mind, and dares not answer nay.
I pray thee, gentle mortal, sing again. Mine ear is much enamoured of thy note.
Hey, look at my princess dressed in red. I go, I nay. Bet you 10 quid she knocks them dead. Jack him out, singing that.
Is it you?
Is it me?
Is it yourself, as they say?
Nice to meet you.
How are you?
Very well, thank you.
Gosh, what height are you?
5'11", or just a little bit under.
Wow. I don't know an awful lot about your background and your career and so far as to what you've been up to.
I'm 22. I've modelled since I was 14.
What?
Yeah.
What height were you then?
Probably 5'7", maybe. Yeah.
Gosh.
Then the last few years I've done a few films and obviously kept to education. And then I just knew so little about the art world, and so I decided to study it for my degree.
And does art really interest you?
It's just very inspiring to study kind of the most time has tested influential artists and like creative thinkers of the last, how many thousand years.
I got this book out of all the stuff that I've done since I started painting and when I was a little kid. I painted that when I was 14, self-portrait.
Yeah.
That was my wife when we were first married.
Oh, that's great.
It's an exercise in just using one or two colours. That's red and black and white.
Yeah.
And just a tiny bit of yellow. That's a two-colour
And is
line.
Impressionism like your favourite kind of style of art for influence?
It's the Queen's painting, yeah. I wanted to get her looking like a real person. I wanted to make sure that she wasn't sort of overwhelmed by pomp and circumstance, you know, the regal regalia.
And how long did she have to sit for?
She sat for an hour, that first one, and then we had another sitting for an hour. She'd been down at the Solent the night before, and she had to stand there in the drizzling rain. Majesty, with all the fleet, 400 vessels were there to be acknowledged, and she arrived at the sitting the next day looking absolutely awful and grey and exhausted and with an awful cold. I hope you're feeling much better than you were.
No, I'm not, I'm afraid. I think the day out at sea didn't do me any good at all, but it's, I think the doctor just says it'll get better.
Good. I didn't know what to do. She looked so bad, and so I concentrated on painting the jewellery. A couple of weeks ago I was down in Wales at a function, and one of the people involved in organising it said, "Did you know there's a painting by your granddad out in the main hall upstairs?" And I said, "No." So he took me upstairs, and there is a painting by my grandfather of your grandfather, George V, reviewing the troops in the 1418 war in the trenches. And it sent all shivers up and down the back of my spine. It was really lovely.
And you didn't know it was there?
No, I didn't, no. And at the end of the sitting, at the end of the hour, she said to me,
"Have you painted me today?" Or have you...
"I haven't done anything with you today, but I should do, shouldn't I, now that you're here? You haven't painted my face at all. I might just as well have sent my costume on a clothes hanger." And I went hot and cold. I didn't know what to say. And then when she'd gone, the BBC crew came up and they said, "Oh, but she was smiling when she said that. That was said as a joke."
I think it looks very nice. Very friendly, anyway.
Yes, that was my main aim.
Well, that's very clever, I think.
Hey, thank you. Thank you so much once again from us all.
Much fun. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Success.
My granddad and your granddad sitting by the fire. My granddad told your granddad you're gonna set your pants on fire. Singing a hey-na, 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 waka-waka-wane. Yagamofino one-name, Yagamofino. I imagined you sitting, I imagined Bottom underneath there and his back and his knees. I imagined his knees bent and his tummy there and his shoulders down here and the hands, and I imagined him in that position and you absolutely enthralled with this awful donkey character. So that was what I had in mind, and perhaps your other hand over here caressing his bottom, and maybe a huge old tree or something up there, like a great big tree trunks going up.
Do you like follow the contemporary art scene at all?
I must say I get lost in a lot of the conceptual art where they say, this is going to be, this is a video camera taken of somebody walking out of a bedroom and along a corridor, and we're going to put that on a loop and it's going to go round and round and round, and that's going to be our art. And I think, what? I
think, and myself as well, sometimes you go into galleries and you'd see like a blue square or something, you just wouldn't quite understand how that had come from the history of art. Whereas studying it as a slightly more progressive movement of ideas, I now actually have a huge amount of respect and admiration for a lot of conceptual artists, and I mean not all, and it depends. I've just discovered that there's a lot of creative thought that goes behind it, even if it's not kind of traditional in its aesthetic.
Look at my queen all dressed in red. Come on, come on, ten back.
the size of the Queen is tiny, the Queen of the Fairies.
That's quite an interesting idea.
Yeah.
Especially as I'm so tall.
Let's do it again. Talk about
Every bad thing that ever happened to me came from planning ahead. Good ones came from bumping into someone random.
So what's your name?
I'll tell ya, but don't say what. Everyone says what.
Go on then.
It's Jar Jar.
Zaza.
Jar Jar.
Okay, well, I'm Peter.
What?
What's your reaction to being instantly recognisable from television? Does it worry you?
I don't like... It's interesting. I don't really like being on my own with it because it can be quite intimidating and scary. Perhaps being young and being a woman, especially with EastEnders audiences, they're quite aggressive. They can be like... Also, my character's name is Jar Jar, so I just get people shouting Jar Jar out in the street.
So what do you do when they shout and you're
just
walking
go,
the other way?
"Hi."
Oh yeah, oh good.
How are you?
Yeah, it's silly to try and pretend that it didn't exist, and that
No.
you've got to react, you've got to respond to it.
How did you deal with it when it first happened to you?
All right, because I like people. I really get on with people, and
It's also a sense of being on TV a lot and being sort of on popular TV with a lot of viewers, that you're sort of public property.
Sure, they own you.
They own you.
Yeah.
And you're grateful in some way. You want to
Yeah.
be grateful. You think, you're sitting down and watching me every night, and I really appreciate that. If you weren't there, I would be nothing. But, whoa!
Yeah. I had a situation once which scared the living daylights out of me, walking along with my wife in Irving Street in the West End of London. And suddenly, you know, you hear people walking up, coming up and running behind you, hear footsteps, and you realise they're not going to pass you, they're coming straight for you. And it's like the conversation stopped in mid-word, and I thought, what's happening? And all of a sudden the guy's grabbed me by this shoulder with his right hand and spun me round, and he sort of frog-marched me across the pavement to the wall of a shop and slammed me against the wall and said, "Don't try and get away. You must have noticed me noticing you down the corner there. Give us your autograph for my lad. He thinks the sun shines out of your ass. I can't stand the bloody sight of you myself." And he's holding me against the wall like this, and I nearly hit him. I was so close to hitting him when he grabbed me first, because I thought I was being attacked.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you like our hairless cat?
What's she called?
He's a he, and he's called Lizard.
Lizard. I've always wanted to play Titania.
Really?
Yeah. Or any of them from Midsummer Night's Dream. I always like Hermia, but she's meant to be short, and I'm very tall, so I thought I'd never get cast.
Well, here's your big chance, kid.
Look at that man all dressed in green. Oh, that's not a man, that's a loving machine. Can't take him over the not man. I'm singing that song. Hey now, come on, hey. Oh, take him over the not take him over the not.
Can I give you a lift? I'm going to Ballet Angel.
Oh, that's perfect, thank you.
Bring your bag in the back.
Thanks.
How lovely.
How lovely to meet you.
How are you?
Yeah, I'm good.
I feel
good.
as if I know you, you know, you
Well-
feel as if you know you intimately from watching you on the screen.
Same thing. I've seen
Mutual
you for
feel.
years.
It's funny, isn't it?
Yeah, it's really weird.
And you never get used to it. You know,
No.
walk up to somebody and say, "G'day," and then you think, I've never met him before. I've only seen him on the screen.
Yeah,
you know, you treat him like an old friend. How lovely.
How lovely to meet you.
And you
Great
happy?
honour. Yeah, I
You
am.
doing
I'm
it?
feeling great. I need some coffee. But after
It's
that,
done.
I'll be fine.
It's done. It's
Good.
no sooner said than done.
What an amazing place.
Yeah, you get these great big boats full of people that and they've taken them down to Windsor, and they've come back and they've got a microphone. Michael Parkinson, and this is Rolf Harris's house.
How do you feel about that? Are you so used to it now that it doesn't bother you?
Yeah.
But I mean, do you ever sort of want to walk out completely stark naked?
No, I never do.
You don't inflict that on the public, do you? Oh, we saw Rolf. We saw a lot of Rolf.
We saw very little of Rolf. That's what's worrying me. Oh, please. I'm imagining Bottom sitting on something like this, that way. So he's sitting in the most unbecoming, sort of peasantish sort of
exactly, yeah.
Wide open leg, you know, sort of like that.
I suppose the more peasant-like he is, the more ethereal and delicate and...
You are, yeah.
Yeah, the tinier, you know, the exaggerated muscular limbs, you know, all that you see in those sort of reference paintings. It's very interesting, even that idea of articulating sort of what it was to be a peasant, you know.
Hand under there, caressing under the chin.
Okay. So you imagine this is his long nose and his huge ears. Okay.
When I look at you, I keep thinking of, you know, the Irish ghost song story. My young love said to me, my mother won't mind, and my father won't slight you for your lack of kind. The cattle.
Yeah, absolutely.
Then she moved close beside me, and this she did say, those planes from Heathrow are bloody loud
Show number 3, all together now. Tiny kangaroo down, sport. Ribbit kangaroo down, tiny kangaroo down, sport. Tiny kangaroo down. Once again now. Tiny kangaroo down, sport. Tiny kangaroo
today. Gosh, what a day, what a wonderful day. It reminds me of the first day when we arrived in Vancouver. It was brilliant sun like this. I was 30, yeah. 9th of February it was, 61. And what a welcome. They had found out that I was on the ship and that I'd had a big record hit in Australia with Timey Kangaroo Down Sport. And they'd taught the song to the high school choir. When we got here, there was the choir on the dockside singing this song with wonderful Canadian accent. Time a kangaroo down, sport. You know, the lovely sport. Just amazing to see them all welcoming me and Alwyn, and it was just fantastic. Shall we go in?
Yeah, I should say. Can't wait.
Coming out of Australia, you must have seen a lot of Aboriginal art before you left?
I didn't know much about Aboriginal art when I left Australia. No, didn't. And I mean, this was our first introduction to this sort of thing, and we were just bowled over by it, weren't we?
Because one of the things that Rolf Harris did in Britain by introducing the didgeridoo was there's people who say that he brought world music to Britain.
I brought a didgeridoo with me to Vancouver, but at that time I couldn't play it. I just knew about it, and I could make a sound on it, but I couldn't do the cycle breathing, and I learnt that in about 64. I think I got the idea.
Don't ask me dates.
You're blowing from your lungs, and you're going, making that buzzing sound. But when you run out of air from your lungs, you keep the pressure going with the muscles of your cheeks, and you squeeze that air out with your muscles, making this sort of sound, just with the muscles of your cheeks. So the cycle goes lungful of air first. When that runs out, a little bit of this while you breathe in.
That is a basic rhythmic instrument of Australia, isn't it? Do you use this in your?
I use it in the act, actually.
Yeah.
This is the shortest, most playable one.
You can do that forever. You can keep the sound going for the whole of the afternoon. Never run out of air.
So, did you teach Owen how to play the didgeridoo?
No way.
Totally uninterested, was you? Not really.
No way.
Couldn't stand the sound. Drove her mad. With me practicing, lying on the couch, going...
Practicing, but
drive you mental.
I do like to listen to it. It's a lovely instrument.
But how do you feel having a husband who would stand in a park and make those noises in public?
Well, as long as I don't get sprayed, I don't mind.
A friend, and she contacted us back in England many years later and said, I've been offered a totem pole. So we bought it, and she sent it across in a huge crate to us in England, and then we put it up in the garden. Most amazing.
There we go. My domain. A friend of mine sent all this, and I shall use it. And it's all. I haven't even sorted it out yet. That's how new it is, and I'm dying to look at it. This lamp I'm just about finishing, and it's an old sewing machine. I think they're wonderful things, especially the old ones like this. I mean, it's wonderful. And there's one over here, which I've got to make a shade for. I did have a shade, but the cat loved it and knocked it flying. And this is the story of Cinderella. Here she is coming out of her coach. Some of them are fractured. Because I'm always looking around junk shops. Oh, I don't know where they are now. Oh, here they are. Usually under things. Some quite gruesome ones. I don't know what the scene of soldiers and a cannon going off, and they've been hit, and oh dear. These are all gruesome. This poor bird is going to be beheaded.
So you went into like an antique shop?
There's one or two sort of very junky ones, and I found them in there.
And what did you think when you found them? Were you by yourself? Were you with Rolf?
No, I wasn't with Rolf because I can't take him anywhere. Everybody recognises him, and so they talk and all over him, and it spoils it for me. So I go on my own.
Have you always braided your hair with stones?
I have for many years, yes. I had it done once on a beach, the usual tourist thing, and I loved it. I loved it so much. that when I came home I got real beads instead of those awful plastic things. And that was great. It was lovely. And this, you've got to see this glass skull. I'm working on this one.
I love those two big skulls up there in the top corner.
Well, the little one is a Dartmoor pony, and the big one was found in Portobello Market, and it's a zebra. I have got one or two skulls down there. One's a koala bear. I found that up in Queensland.
When you started out?
I've always collected ever since I was a little girl. Being dyslexic, I couldn't cope with schooling. And in those days they didn't know anything about it, and they thought I was a dunce, to put it lightly. So they didn't bother with me. They didn't help me. School was a nightmare. But when I got to college, and I was so happy about that because I loved college. I could do everything, and I was praised for everything, and I won awards, and I suddenly didn't need to know about being a slow reader, and couldn't do anything in figures. Figures are hopeless. I don't believe I've got 5 fingers. I have to count on my hands. And that is, it's quite a drawback in some respects, like getting change back. I've got no idea. I just look at it and think, well, it looks right. I hope it is.
But without that, maybe you wouldn't have become an artist.
Yes, quite. You see, there's always a way around things, isn't there?
Sunrise, she bringing the morning. Sunrise, bringing the morning. Fluttering the skirts all around. Sunrise, she come with the dawning. Sunrise, come with the dawning. Spreading all the light all around.
Bit of white down here in that corner.
Sunrise on the kangaroo paw. Sunrise on the kangaroo paw. Glistening the dew all around.
What do you think people's one abiding image from all of Shakespeare's works might be? Would you see this as being one of them?
Yeah, for sure. A donkey's head and a fairy's pretty...
Yeah.
The contrast between that's pretty powerful. And the idea it represents,
Yeah.
gives hope to a lot of people.
People who've got donkey-looking heads.
Have you ever seen a Shakespeare play?
I never have. I think it's a very sort of elite bunch of people who've seen Shakespeare. I don't think a lot of people have seen it as a play.
Well, you grew up in Australia, presumably.
Yeah.
Is it as popular there? Because in England, it's pretty unavoidable growing up to not, like, even if it's a school play or something, everyone's, you feel like it's part of your childhood, for most people.
Yeah.
I mean, is it as popular there?
I think it's fairly popular there. I think so. Yeah. But I think the ordinary man in the street wouldn't have a clue as to Shakespeare out there. When I first started doing this show, the Rolf Harris Show, I was so busy concentrating on the painting because somehow you can't talk sense and paint properly at the same time. One goes or the other goes. The painting goes absolutely dreadful. All the common sense speech goes all wrong. You don't know what you've said and it's usually wrong. So that's where we came up with this where I didn't have to think about
just the way he created something out of nothing so quickly. To do what he did in a matter of 10 minutes, I would take 2 days.
That's proper art. Yes. That's something I couldn't do, so that's art, as far as I'm concerned.
Wow, that's very impressionistic, isn't it? Look at that rain running down on the faces. A true watercolour.
Do you find, Rolf, that there's a particular market of people who buy your art? Do you find that it's a very eclectic mix, or it's a certain age or bracket? Or
Anybody really who is interested in getting things which are like the image that they know. You know, they want to see something that they recognise up on their wall, really.
Well, it's interesting that Rolf would say that the people who buy his art, people who want pictures they can recognise on the wall, because that suggests like there's still a very strong vein of more of a kind of traditionalist way of seeing art. I'm no art expert, and to try and sum up like a 2-3 year course in a sentence is very hard. But a real significant factor I learnt studying modernism, at least, was the break made around about the 50s to go against the notion that you had to create an illusion on canvas. And it came to the conclusion with the abstract expressionists, and instead of deny the existence of a canvas by creating the idea of depth, you have to draw attention to the fact that this is only a canvas, and draw attention to the crossbar and to the shape and to the size, and not be restricted by like kind of easel picture. And so the idea was stressed that if it was going to continue to try and create illusions, it would just fall into mere like entertainment and kitsch. But it's really interesting to see that somebody who's still holding on to those very traditional ideas is so popular, you know, and has a huge market, and it creates quite an interesting dialogue still of possibilities within the art world.
Yeah, I suppose my approach to painting doesn't involve any heavy thinking about how am I going to present this, what am I going to do. What I'm trying to do is blur down my eyes, get a blurred effect, paint the blur, and then refine the blur and try and reproduce what I see there. I don't really want to go off into other areas where I'm out of my depth, you know. Perhaps I should do that more often, get out of my depth. I don't know.
Why should you, Rolf?
I don't know. Get something new happening in what you do. I don't know.
When you were a child at school, they taught you quite a lot. You were told when you should speak and when you should not. You were taught to read and write, take your lessons home at night. A little knowledge serves you well, but the golden rule does not. Then I said, what do you mean? She said, deedly-dum, deedly-dee. Where'll I go and what'll I be? She said, deedly-dum, deedly-dee. When I got back home that night, I lay awake in bed. I thought of that old gypsy and the words that she had said. Now I say with due respect, the more we know, the worse we get. Still, if you've no regrets, go have your fortune read. Then I said, now what do you see? She said, deedly-dum, deedly-dum. She said, deedly-dum, deedly-dum.
So, Emer, you know the play?
Yeah, I studied it at school. I've never
You could give me some information about it then, because I didn't.
You don't know the play?
No. I just know a little bit about this one scene, but I don't know much about it. I know the premise that she wakes up and the first thing she sees she falls in love with.
Yeah.
Which is that donkey-headed guy.
She wakes up and she sees the most beautiful thing she's ever seen in her entire life, lying in her arms. She's totally in love with this.
I'll be over there in a minute.
Yeah. With this man she's woken up next to. Bottom's really sort of, you know, he's eoing and being a donkey. And she's madly obsessed with him, can't stop touching him. And it's just hilarious.
I've just always liked the thought that this beautiful young lady has fallen madly in love with this guy, and he's like a total peasant, and here she is, the queen of the fairies, just expounding all the love she has for this this guy who doesn't really know what on earth's happening to him, I don't think. In a funny sort of way, it's all like me coming from Western Australia, from miles away, from nothing like this whole atmosphere at all in England, and suddenly finding myself painting Queen Elizabeth. Come in, Cat. Yes, the Queen of the Fairies is just over there. You're probably wanting to say hello to her.
I read somewhere that you did a song with the Beatles once.
Yeah, I wrote special lyrics to Tie Me Kangaroo Down Sport. Don't confuse me, pet dingo, Ringo. Don't confuse me, pet dingo. Then I've tried to go into a Liverpool accent. He can't understand your lingo, Ringo. So don't confuse me, pet dingo, all together now. And they all sang the chorus with me. But the nice thing was they did the Little Richard thing in the middle. So it went, tie me kangaroo down. Ooh. They did that bit that Little Richard did. And it's just great. Tie me kangaroo down. Tie me kangaroo down. Oh, tie me kangaroo down.
Oh my God! What a phony bunch of laughter that was. Hey, what about messing up that ending after all the rehearsal? We did at least once.
But you forgot the words, didn't you, Rolf?
At the beginning. What a beautiful speech, Sir John.
I remember the verse, keep the hits coming on, John. Keep the hits coming on. Keep them going till I'm gone, John, but keep those hits coming on. Nobody knew at that point that it was going to be until John's gone, you know, it was...
Yeah.
Keep the hits coming on until you've gone. That was a shock.
So you've done your research, Emer.
Yeah.
Have you?
Yeah. How could I not? I'm coming to meet Rolf Harris.
Oh, good Lord.
You used to be a champion swimmer.
That's right. I was Australian junior backstroke champion.
You have many strings to your bow.
Well, if you ask me now, I probably couldn't complete a 50-yard burst of backstroke. I've got so out of training.
Sleep thou, and I will wind thee in my arms. So doth the woodbine the sweet honeysuckle gently entwist. The female ivy so enrings the barky fingers of the elm. Oh, how I love thee, how I dote on thee.
OK, let's get on with it.
When did you first see Rolf on television?
You know, Rolf's always sort of been there. I don't mean that disrespectfully. It's so you've been there for years, as you know. So I can't really remember the very first time. I think it was probably like something like some Blue Peter, and I remember. Yeah, I think it must have been that. But you're just you've always been part of that kind of growing up.
Follow me. And I'll show you where it's at. Hey now, come and see. I'm the Pied Piper, trust in me. I'm the Pied Piper, and I'll show you where life's at. Hey, follow me. I'm the Pied Piper, follow me. I'm the Pied Piper, and I'll show you what to do. You stamp your feet. Now your hands.
Do you remember you had that painting where you gave people a tiny slice of a huge...
Oh, yeah, the big one there.
Yeah, now I thought that was really exciting.
everybody gets a chance to do a 30 by 20 canvas, and it's all part of a massive big thing, and each canvas is numbered.
Yeah.
And then we'll put them all together for the final thing.
And our first canvas, there it is. It's being placed in position. Number 1 canvas, top left. It's been painted by Melanie Hammerstone, works for London Underground. And on the other side...
What you convey is anyone can paint and everyone can. We've got a very good friend of ours staying with us at the moment called Phil Davis. He's an actor. And he got very excited when he heard that I was going to be working with you, because he's fanatical about painting, and he used to watch your shows, and for him it was so accessible. That's what you gave him, the opportunity to look at paintings and to dissect them the way he said it was wonderful.
See what it looks like. Live on BBC One. The Rolf on Art Big Event 2004. Ladies and gentlemen, the People's Hayway.
Do you find it difficult having people watch you?
No, I've been a show-off all my life, so very happy to have 1 million people staring at what you're doing. I really enjoyed doing television shows where they're all watching it develop, and I get great buzz out of that. When you're up on stage in a fashion shoot, do you not work to individuals in the audience? Do you not try and pinpoint
You mean in a show?
people? Yeah.
The situation with the show is it's such a straight dynamic. Like, you walk to the end of the catwalk, you're really posing to cameras, and the people watching are on the sides. You never turn your head to the left or the right, you know.
Really?
So eye contact's not really part of it.
Okay, gosh. Because when I first started out in show business, I was given the advice that you must make eye contact.
Morning.
They've got a barrier to keep me away from you.
You look younger.
I am younger. When did you start wearing specs? What age were you? 4. I got mine when I was 8. You can get a little sports strap that goes around the back so they don't slide down your nose all the time. I used to wear one all the time because I was forever doing that, you know. It drives me mad.
You made my day, made my year.
You've done a lot for mine, I tell you. Jenny with a Y?
Yes. And I bought trusts for my husband, and he bought me 3 fishermen because it's our ruby wedding anniversary this year. So
It's a great image, that boy trying to get that little starling to take some crumbs out of his hand. And the starling is sort of leaning back saying, "Don't make a false move or I'm out of here," you know.
It's interesting to me, Rolf, as Lily is emerging, her face, I feel that it's less that she's, foolishly and madly in love with this donkey's head, as she's sort of like defiant about having made the donkey choice.
Well, at first I was going to say I don't know if the Queen should be frowning, and I thought actually I quite like that she's frowning.
Actually, it's like, it's my right. It sort of feels like an assertion.
Fuck off.
Yeah.
Why are you staring at me? I'm just in love.
Well, actually, I didn't like him when we first met. He was always acting the fool and being silly, and I would just turn away in utter disgust, I think. It wasn't until some years later, wasn't it, really?
We met again,
yes. Yeah. And he had definitely grown up. But he was still a bit, the way you picked me up at that exhibition and carried me across the floor, and I was absolutely furious with him. I was embarrassed and...
We met at the Royal Academy on Varnishing Day. We each had work accepted for their summer exhibition. And I saw her there and I said, "My God, you look beautiful." And I picked her up behind the shoulder, behind the knees, and I ran the full length of the main room in the Royal Academy with her shouting, "Put me down," with a red face. And suddenly I had matured enough to realise the enormity of what I was doing. Yeah, come a bit closer.
You haven't changed.
I've got more lovable, actually. I got a bit more lovable with the years.
You even got more handsome, my boy.
Pleasure.
You look remarkable for your age, Marseille.
Oh, thank
you.
you.
Incredible.
You're just having a holiday?
No, I'm working tomorrow at the P&E doing a show there. Nice and loud entry there. Nice and loud.
There's an old Australian stockman lying, dying. What a memory. Don't bother to do that, it's just for the audience to do that, okay? And he says, here we go. Watch me wallabies feed, mate. Watch me wallabies feed. Hey, look, there are
When I play Jar Jar, I have blue hair, and I have quite thick black eyeliner, and I wear this pair of denim hot pants all the time, and Doc Marten boots. My voice is quite different, a bit more East End.
Do us a bit of the voice.
What do you want me to say?
Well, tell us, do you remember the last bit of scripted stuff you did? Let's do us a bit of that.
Oh gosh, I can't remember. I was in yesterday. Although yesterday all I said was, oi! I can't remember anything. Put me on the spot, Rolf. Okay, I think of something that I said there recently. Last bloke who two-timed me, his name and number ended up on every toilet wall this side of London Bridge. How embarrassing.
Do you know, I spent 7 years trying to speak correctly, trying to lose my Australian accent and say how now brown cow. And I could never do it, of course, because it never worked. And the only thing that kept me sane was every Thursday night I went down to a club called the Down Under Club, which was in Fulham, all for Australians and New Zealanders. And I could just be myself there and do my singing and sing the Aussie songs. And that's where I wrote Timey Kangaroo Down Sport for that audience, for all those young Australians who were over here at the time. I sang it every Thursday night for about, 6 years, I guess.
Wow.
At that club. The nice thing was, by the time I got to record the song, I knew how to do it.
There's an old Australian stockman lying, dying. What a memory. Very good. He gets himself up onto one elbow, turns to his mates who are gathered round in the P&E, and he says...
And he gets himself up on one elbow and he turns to his mates who are gathered round and he says, "Take me koala back, Jack. Take me koala back. He lives somewhere out on the track, Mac.
So take me koala back, I wanna get the nap. Tie me kangaroo down, sport. Tie me kangaroo down. One more time now. Tie me kangaroo down, sport. Tie me kangaroo down. Tie me kangaroo down, sport. Tie me kangaroo down.
That's better. I gather you saw me at Glastonbury.
Yeah, I did, yeah. I was a bit in the back, but I saw mostly on the screen.
Away.
Yeah.
Did you like this bit where they all did this?
Yeah.
Wasn't it good? I couldn't
It
believe
was
it.
great.
I gather you've just got back from the States?
Via Milan Fashion Week.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I thought you'd come direct from the US.
Yeah.
So you're tired, are you? Tired as me?
Yeah.
Lizzie has played Midsummer Night's Dream. Tell them about that.
Oh, yeah. I grew up mostly on tour, and there was with my father, and there was a big group of children, and we used to kind of get together and do plays sometimes, and I played Puck.
You played Puck?
Yeah.
There's some miscasting there.
Yeah.
Got that blown up. I can use it as a rough guide, but it would be better to use you as a real guide.
Yeah.
to paint you. I just roughed that out last night and dried it in front of the Aga.
Lovely.
So that's all completely dry. And I imagined your hand there, somewhere like that.
Mm-hmm.
The weight is on the front leg and the arm up there, possibly.
Mm-hmm.
If and as long as you can cope with it. If it gets exhausting, get rid of it, put it down.
Okay.
Oh gosh, that's lovely.
Well, the first thing I actually saw of yours was my father really liked your three-legged...
Oh, Jake!
The three-legged man routine.
How lovely.
Hilarious.
And you saw that?
Yeah.
I'm Jake the beg diddly-diddly-diddlum with the extra leg diddly-diddly-diddlum. Wherever I go through rain and snow, the people always let me know. There's Jake the beg diddly-diddly-diddlum.
Rolf, how did it work?
It's a good question.
Is it a
Next
secret?
question.
Yeah.
I'm not bloody telling you. I'm not going to... It's got to keep a few secrets, Vikram.
'Cause I was born with an extra leg, and since that day begun, I had to learn to stand on my own 3 feet. Believe me, that's not fun. I'm Jake the beg diddly-diddly-diddlum with the extra leg diddly-diddly-diddlum. Wherever I go through rain and snow, the people always let me know.
Do you mind manipulating the proportions, considering it's a fairy? You know what I mean? It's not a human.
But I would like the figure to be in proportion as one would imagine a fairy based on a human shape would be. And if I look at the size of your head there, I go one down to there, and down to there would be where your knee is, so that the head's got to reduce to about there. Otherwise, the body, the legs are going to be down here and off the bottom, and this leg is going to be down and out, disappearing down there.
It's a different thing, but there's an amazing print by, Albert Dürer? German artist, with the backside of a cow or like an animal coming into the shop. And he did a lot of those kind of things in his prints where things would be cut off, which was completely revolutionary in a quiet kind of way in 1500 when it was all about fitting everything into a perfect frame. So I'm all for like wrong proportions or body goes out of the frame. Or
Of course, Degas did that as well, having half a person on the edge of it.
Yes.
Yeah. That's where the leg really goes, and that's where this leg really goes down there.
Do you never draw out your designs before you paint?
Now, if you draw, then in a funny way, you're assuming that the drawing is perfect. Whereas if you just paint and then correct things as they appear wrong to you, then you haven't got any preconceived idea of perfection sitting on that canvas in the form of a pencil line, which you put in first.
And do you feel like you reach perfection on your paintings, or you never? It's like a goal that you can never.
Depends what you mean by perfection, because if you're looking at photographic perfection, you can proceed and come down and down and down.
Your own idea of perfection.
My own idea of perfection is to get an impression of whatever it is you're painting. Paint what you see, not what you know. That's what I've always worked on.
Fearless and free came a race that is called Maori. Guided by stars, they sailed from afar over stormy seas. Hoyara, hoyara, where the Maoris, hey, great canoemen, hey, sailed the ocean, hey, scorned the dangers, hey, till we came to, hey, Aotearoa, hey, till we...
You know what happened to me recently? I was accused of being ashamed of my Irish roots by a newspaper. And I was I'm actually very emotional about it now, really upset. I couldn't believe, it it's just so stupid anyhow. But living in a different country and pronouncing quite a difficult name for a lot of people to say, Dervla, I've never thought of losing my accent. I just get on. I always make a joke about the fact that actually, well, you invaded our country, so I've had to learn your language. Do you know, I think for
You're
me...
a bit like me, are you? You're very definitely Irish. I'm very definitely Australian.
So it doesn't matter where I live.
Very happy to be accepted in this part of the world.
Very much so.
With me now, I've got that most Australian of all Australians whose show, Hey Presto, It's Rolf, is compulsive viewing for millions of children. I think, I'm sure.
That's a
On
nice
Friday
thought.
nights. How many generations are Australian?
My parents are from Cardiff. They went out to Australia, and I'm a first-generation Australian.
An awful lot of your songs, the most popular songs, the ones that have made really at the top of the hit parade, have got a tremendous Australian background to them. Is this a deliberate creating of an Australian contemporary song?
Yeah, I think so. The first one was a slight accident, really, the Timey Kangaroo Down Sport, the one that started me off in the recording game. I had been over here in England for some 6 years or so, trying like mad to become terribly British, terribly, you know, very, spelled V-E-D-D-Y, very British. And, you know, really trying hard. People said you'll never get any work if you speak with that atrocious accent, you know.
All who are well pedigree, Rolfie boy, has pedigree.
Exercise your wildest whim tonight. You are out with Diamond Jim tonight.
Could they be misleading us? Silver spoons were used for feeding us. We've got elegance. If you've not got elegance, you can never ever carry it off.
My very first voiceover agent was incredibly rude about the way I spoke.
Rude?
Yeah, very rude. But I kept on thinking, she's got it wrong. She's got it wrong. The tide will change. And of course it did. This idea of this received pronunciation, this way of speaking English, actually excluded so many millions of people. But hey, they gotta let us in the end. The troglodytes will take over.
Exercise your wild swim tonight. We are out with Diamond Jim tonight. What like that? There is that acting like a born aristocrat. We've got elegance. If you ain't got elegance, you can never ever carry it all. We've got elegance. We've got built-in elegance, and we know you.
That's good if you do that. That's good. I'll go from there to there. That's got to come out a little bit, I see.
So, apart from Puck, have you done much acting, or do you want to do much acting, Lizzie?
No, not really. No. Quite happy with how things are.
But are you trying to imagine yourself with the donkey there?
Yeah, I think there's a fair amount of acting maybe that goes into modelling. Yeah, you use a bit of your imagination. Sorry, Vikram, I'm not so brilliant at talking about myself, and I've never talked on TV before, so I'm quite nervous. I've said no for years and years, but I couldn't turn this one down.
I mean, of course, now you've intrigued me, because I want to know why this would be the one you'd want to do.
How could I say no to be painted by Rolf?
Keep talking, I'm on your side.
Well, I've always loved his paintings.
Oh, how nice.
Yeah, and as a model, it's a real treat to be painted, because nowadays everybody uses digital cameras, and it takes away a lot of the art from photography. So it's very refreshing to be part of something creative like this.
When did you start modelling?
13 years ago, so half my life.
So you must like it.
Yeah.
Do you like the stone?